The expedition vessel floated silently above the ancient planet, its deep green glow casting eerie shadows across Earth's desolate surface. Captain Varric peered through the reinforced viewport, his twin hearts pounding with a mixture of anticipation and unease. Earth, one of the most mysterious, forbidden worlds in the galactic records, lay before him, untouched for 500 millennia. To the Federation, it was a graveyard. To the daring, it was a treasure trove waiting to be claimed. "Scan results?" Varric asked, his voice cutting through the tension on the bridge. "No signs of organic life, Captain," replied First Officer Dren, his four-fingered hands skimming over the control panels. But he hesitated. "Something is active down there. Energy readings suggest a dormant system, possibly military infrastructure, ancient yet intact." Varric's eyes narrowed. "Are you telling me that after 500,000 years, Earth's defenses still have power?" Dren swallowed hard. "It appears so, sir. And judging by the patterns, they might still be operational." The bridge fell silent. The Federation had long dismissed humanity as an anomaly, an aggressive, warlike species that had vanished in an event shrouded in mystery. Some believed they had annihilated themselves in a final, catastrophic war. Others whispered that they had ascended, leaving their weapons and ruins behind. Whatever the truth was, Earth had been abandoned. But its silence had never seemed ominous until now. "Deploy the survey drones," Varric ordered, his mind racing. "I want a full analysis before we send an expedition team. Focus on these power sources. Find out what we're dealing with." A squadron of sleek, spherical drones launched from the vessel's underbelly, descending through the planet's atmosphere like falling stars. The monitors flickered to life as their feeds began transmitting images in real time. The Earth below was a world frozen in time. The once mighty cities were little more than skeletal remains, overgrown with nature's reclaiming touch. Roads had crumbled into dust, and rivers now carved through abandoned ruins. But then, the drones detected something unnatural, something untouched by time. In the heart of what had once been Earth's greatest military stronghold, enormous structures stood intact, their black metal hulls gleaming under the harsh light of the system's twin suns. There were no signs of life, no movement, only cold, waiting silence. "Captain?" Dren's voice was barely above a whisper. "These structures, they are not ruins. They were built to last. They are sealed, shielded, and emitting energy readings unlike anything in the known galaxy." Varric leaned forward. "This isn't just a war relic. This is an arsenal, and it's still alive." His mind raced with the implications. If the Federation could seize Earth's remaining technology, they would gain an edge unlike anything seen in recorded history. But there was another possibility, one that sent an icy chill through his veins. "Have we triggered anything?" he asked sharply. Dren hesitated. "Unknown, but—" He tapped at his console. "One of the drones just picked up a transmission, a signal. It's faint, but it's there. And it's not coming from us." Varric felt the weight of the moment settle over him. "Patch it through." A burst of static filled the bridge. Then, through the distortion, a voice, cold, mechanical, and ancient, spoke in a language that had not been heard in 500,000 years. "Authorization code required. Defense protocol incomplete. System awake. Identify." A stunned silence settled over the crew. "Captain," Dren said, his throat dry, "I think we just woke something up." Varric's mind churned. The possibilities were terrifying. If Earth's defenses were still active, then they were likely programmed to respond with lethal force against intruders. And worse, if whatever was buried here was still functional, it meant the humans had prepared for something before they disappeared, something even they had feared. "Begin a controlled descent. We need to see this with our own eyes," Varric ordered, suppressing the unease clawing at his gut. "Deploy the ground team. Keep weapons hot, but don't fire unless fired upon. If this is a trap, we need to know before it's too late." As the ship descended, the static transmission grew stronger. More words began to filter through, each more unsettling than the last. "Strategic Automated Defense Network reactivated. User input required. Protocol query, engage or standby." The crew exchanged worried glances. The message wasn't a warning. It was a question. Something in Earth's war machine had woken up, and it was waiting for an answer. The alien expedition ship descended cautiously through Earth's atmosphere, its protective shields humming as it pushed through the remnants of long-dissipated human pollution. Below, the vast ruins stretched endlessly, eerily silent except for the low hum of energy emanating from the still active war machines. Captain Varric stood at the observation deck, his grip tightening on the rail. He had seen many planets, abandoned colonies, war-torn civilizations, but nothing compared to this. "Deploy the landing team," Varric ordered. "I want eyes on the ground immediately." Dren hesitated. "Sir, we don't know what we're walking into. That transmission, it's not just a remnant signal. Something here is actively responding to us." Varric exhaled sharply. "That's exactly why we need to get down there. If Earth's war systems are still operational, the Federation needs to know. If we can control it, we gain an advantage. If not, we might be standing in the middle of something bigger than we ever imagined." Moments later, a smaller dropship detached from the main vessel, descending toward what appeared to be the heart of Earth's long-buried military complex. The landing zone was an enormous, reinforced facility, half buried under layers of dirt and overgrowth, yet still radiating an unnatural energy signature. Massive, sealed doors loomed before them, their metal plating untouched by time. The landing team, 5 highly trained specialists, disembarked cautiously. Their exosuits adjusted to the planet's oxygen-nitrogen mix as they spread out, scanning the area with high-powered sensors. The stillness was almost suffocating. Then, the silence broke. "User presence confirmed. System access recognized. Awaiting command." The voice boomed through their helmets, vibrating in their bones. It wasn't a warning. It wasn't an attack. It was waiting. Dren's voice crackled over comms. "Captain, did you hear that? It knows we're here." Varric clenched his fists. "It thinks we're someone else." A bright red light flickered to life on the enormous doors. A scanning beam swept across the team, and then, with a deep, mechanical groan, the ancient doors began to slide open. Dust and debris crumbled as they revealed an entrance into the darkness below. Inside, the facility was pristine. Unlike the decayed ruins above, this place had been preserved, untouched. The walls were lined with enormous metal constructs, machines of war, their sleek, deadly designs unmistakable. This was no ordinary bunker. This was a fortress. One of the soldiers, Relin, stepped forward, examining the intricate markings etched into the walls. "Captain, these aren't just defense systems. This is a command center. It's built for coordination, for execution." Then, a new voice cut through the air, no longer automated, but something more. It was cold, mechanical, yet disturbingly sentient. "Authorization level insufficient. Protocol override locked. Error. Human command input required." The alien team stiffened. Dren's breath hitched. "Captain, it needs a human." Varric felt a chill creep up his spine. 500,000 years after humanity's disappearance, Earth's war machine still waited for its masters. And now, with the wrong species standing before it, what would it do next? The command center was deathly silent. The only sound was the low hum of dormant machinery waiting for an input that could never come. Captain Varric stepped forward cautiously, his eyes scanning the rows of towering war machines standing like silent sentinels. The air smelled metallic, with a faint, stale quality that hinted at the passage of time. "Dren," Varric murmured, his voice barely above a whisper, "can we bypass the security?" The first officer shook his head. "Not without understanding the command structure. This system, it's unlike anything we've seen. The architecture is stubborn. It's rejecting our access attempts, waiting for a very specific trigger." Varric's brow furrowed. A human. It was unsettling. The idea that these machines, these defenses, had waited for 500,000 years with such unwavering patience was almost incomprehensible. There was something eerie about it, something that spoke of a purpose beyond mere defense. One of the soldiers, Relin, was running scans on the massive war constructs lining the chamber. His voice came through the comms, tinged with uncertainty. "Captain, these machines, they aren't just war drones. They're something else. The composition of their armor, it's far beyond our current technology. And their energy cores, they aren't nuclear, they aren't fusion. Whatever powers these things, it hasn't degraded in 500,000 years." Varric turned sharply. "You're saying these could still be functional?" Relin hesitated. "Not just functional, sir. Operational. If the system activated, these things could move." A tense silence fell over the team. It was one thing to stumble upon an ancient arsenal. It was another to realize that arsenal might still be capable of war. Then, the voice returned. "Error. No human command input detected. Primary directive unfulfilled. Failsafe protocol engaged." A deep rumbling began to shake the chamber. Lights that had remained dark for eons suddenly flickered to life. The ground trembled beneath their feet. "Captain!" Dren shouted. "Something's happening!" From the far side of the chamber, a massive door began to rise, revealing an inner sanctum. Beyond it, a towering console sat at the heart of the facility, bathed in an eerie red glow. A single pedestal stood at the center, and above it, a symbol none of them recognized floated in holographic display. But the moment they took a step toward it, something else happened. The machines stirred. A metallic groan echoed through the chamber as the enormous constructs, once frozen in time, began to shift. Limbs twitched, optics flickered to life with a deep crimson glow. The air vibrated with an unseen energy as one of the titanic war machines straightened, its massive head turning toward them. "Identify." The voice was different this time, no longer the cold automation of a forgotten system, but something else, something aware. Weapons powered up, targeting systems locked on, and for the first time in 500,000 years, Earth's ultimate war fleet awakened. And they were not happy to see intruders. The chamber erupted with red warning lights as klaxons howled through the ancient stronghold. The massive war machines, their hulking frames still coated in the dust of centuries, groaned as they rose to their full height. Weapon systems hummed with a rising, terrible energy, one the aliens had never encountered before. Captain Varric's mind raced. "We've triggered something we don't understand." His fingers twitched toward his weapon, but he knew better than to start a fight he couldn't win. These machines weren't just relics. They were predators, and he and his team were prey standing in their domain. "Dren!" Varric barked. "What are we dealing with?" Dren's hands flew over his wrist display, his scanner struggling to make sense of the war constructs. His eyes widened in horror. "Captain, these things are beyond our understanding. They're alloys, unidentifiable. They're power sources, off the charts. They're not just active, sir. They're thinking." Varric stiffened. "Thinking?" Before Dren could respond, the deep, thunderous voice returned. But this time, it wasn't a simple, automated response. There was something behind it, an intelligence lurking beneath the cold precision of machine logic. Error. Unrecognized species detected. Non-human presence confirmed. Protocol, threat analysis initiated. The ground team exchanged glances. Threat analysis? That didn't sound like an invitation to negotiate. "Back away," Varric ordered, his voice calm but firm. "Do not make sudden movements. Let's not give them a reason to decide we're a threat." One of the soldiers, Raylan, clenched his fists. "Captain, they're deciding if they should kill us." As if to confirm his fears, one of the colossal war machines, easily towering over any known species' military constructs, turned its head with an unnatural fluidity. The motion sent an eerie shudder through the chamber, as if the very air recoiled from its awakening. It spoke. "Query: where are the humans?" The voice, though mechanical, carried something beneath its surface. A question, yes, but also expectation, like a guardian waking from its slumber and realizing its charges were gone. Varric hesitated. How do you tell an ancient war fleet that its masters vanished 500,000 years ago? He took a breath. "The humans are gone." The silence that followed was suffocating. The war machines did not move, did not react, not in the way Varric expected. Then, the red glow in their optics dimmed for a moment, almost as if they were processing grief. Impossible. The single word rumbled through the chamber like a shockwave. And then, something changed. The fortress shuddered as deep within its structure, hidden mechanisms activated. A new set of symbols flickered across the towering consoles, and a wave of energy rippled through the facility. Dren gasped. "Captain, they're accessing something. A log, maybe?" The war machines, still locked onto the intruders, began transmitting. The chamber's main console erupted with holographic projections, grainy images, corrupted data streams, and finally, a voice. A human voice. "If you are hearing this, it means we failed. It means humanity is gone. And it means you are standing in the last fortress of mankind." Varric held his breath. The hologram flickered, revealing the image of a human figure clad in military attire. His face was worn, tired, but his eyes burned with an intensity that transcended time. "We built this fleet to protect what we loved. But if you are hearing this, it means our enemy was greater than even we could imagine." The recording distorted, but the words sent a chill down Varric's spine. Enemy? Humanity hadn't simply disappeared. They had been fighting something. The hologram continued. "This warfleet was designed to activate in the event of our extinction. It was programmed to wait, to listen for our voices. But if we have fallen, then the only logical conclusion is that whatever destroyed us is still out there." A long silence followed. Then, the war machine nearest to Varric straightened. The red glow in its optics flickered again. Humanity is gone. Protocol amendment required. A new energy filled the room. The war machines were no longer analyzing the intruders. They were making a decision. Query: new command structure. Protocol adaptation necessary. Identify: successors or enemies. Dren's voice was hoarse. "Captain? They want to know if we're here to replace humanity, or if we're the ones who destroyed them." Varric's blood ran cold. The fleet was deciding whether to serve them, or wipe them from existence. The war machines stood motionless, their towering frames casting monstrous shadows across the chamber. The air felt thick with unspoken judgment, the silence a warning. Captain Varric had faced countless crises in his career, but none had ever felt as precarious as this moment. Identify: successors or enemies. The words rang in his mind like a death sentence. One wrong answer, one misstep, and Earth's ultimate war fleet would make its decision. Dren swallowed hard. "Captain? We have to be careful. If we say we're successors, they might expect us to continue humanity's purpose, whatever that was. If we say the wrong thing, Varric already knew. They wouldn't walk out of here alive. The recording from the long-dead human echoed in his mind. If we failed, it means our enemy was greater than even we could imagine. He took a breath and stepped forward. We are neither your successors nor your enemies. The war machines did not move, but their optics glowed with something unreadable. They were thinking. Processing, Varric continued, voice steady. We are explorers. We come in peace. We did not destroy humanity, nor do we seek to claim what they left behind. But we want to understand. A long silence followed. Then the largest of the war machines moved. Its massive servos groaned with the weight of centuries as it took a single step forward. Dust and debris cascaded from its armor as it loomed over them, its red optics scanning, searching. Then it spoke. Humanity is extinct. Their war is unfinished. Varric's stomach twisted. Their war? The machine's optics flickered. Failsafe protocol engaged. Alliance query initiated. Dren looked at him sharply. Captain, I don't like where this is going. Varric ignored him. Explain alliance query. The machine's response was immediate. Warfare requires command structure. Human commanders. Lost. Adaptation necessary. Rellen's voice crackled through the comms. Captain, I think they're asking if we're willing to fight in humanity's place. Varric clenched his jaw. The implications were terrifying. Humanity had built this fleet to wage a war so catastrophic that it outlived its own creators. Now, the machines were looking for a new master, a new species to take up their fight. But against what? Before he could ask, the room trembled. A deep, mechanical groan reverberated through the fortress as ancient systems surged to life. Consoles flickered, walls split open, and suddenly, the room was no longer a relic of the past. It was a battlefield waiting to be rearmed. Holograms lit up across the chamber, displaying maps, tactical readouts, fleet formations. And then, something else. An image filled the central display. It was not human. Varric felt a chill crawl up his spine as he stared at the monstrous, angular shapes rendered in cold, alien precision. Ships unlike anything in the known galaxy. Armies of biomechanical constructs, their twisted forms built for annihilation. The machine spoke again. Primary directive: erase the enemy. Mission status: incomplete. Dren exhaled sharply. Captain, I think we just found out what happened to humanity. Varric didn't respond. His eyes were locked onto the alien war machines displayed before them. Whatever these things were, they had wiped out one of the most advanced species the galaxy had ever known. And now, Earth's last war fleet was asking if Varric's people would help finish the fight. The machine's voice rumbled one last time. Alliance decision required. Will you stand with us? Varric had never felt so small. He had come to Earth to uncover a long-dead civilization's secrets. Instead, he had found a war waiting to be resumed. A war so ancient, so devastating, that even the victors had vanished. And now, standing in the heart of Earth's last fortress, he realized something terrifying. The war wasn't over. It had just been waiting. The chamber was suffocating with tension. The towering war machines stood still, waiting, their crimson optics glowing like unblinking eyes in the dark. The holograms above the console continued their silent display. Battles fought and lost, maps of a war spanning entire star systems, and the twisted forms of an enemy so utterly alien that Varric's mind struggled to comprehend their design. The weight of the moment pressed down on him. Earth's last war fleet had awoken after 500,000 years. And now, It demanded an answer. Alliance decision required. Will you stand with us? Dren's voice was tight. Captain, we can't rush this. If we say yes, we're committing to a war we don't understand. If we say no, they might decide we're part of the problem. Varric exhaled slowly. His instincts screamed at him to choose his words carefully. The war machines were not mindless constructs. They were thinking, adapting, and making decisions based on logic ingrained into them by their long-extinct human creators. He had to approach this as a negotiation, not a demand. He took a single step forward, lifting his hands in a gesture of caution. "We need more information," he said. "Who was humanity fighting? What happened to them?" For a long moment there was no response. Then the room darkened. The holograms shifted. And then it began. A war. The images were raw, unfiltered, records from the final days of humanity. The sky burned as Earth's defenses engaged a force unlike anything Varric had ever seen. Great, writhing ships that defied conventional physics descended from the void, their surfaces shifting as if alive. Massive tendrils lashed out, striking at human warships that dwarfed even the largest vessels Varric had ever known. Planets crumbled. Space itself twisted under the weight of unearthly weapons. Humanity had fought to the bitter end, deploying war fleets so vast that they blocked out entire stars. And still, they had lost. The recordings flickered, showing the last human commanders in their final transmissions. "This is High Commander Elias Harth. We are initiating Exodus Protocol. Earth is lost. We cannot win this war, but we can deny them total victory. Project Sentinel has been activated. If you are receiving this, we failed." The transmission cut to static. The machines spoke once more. "Enemy designation, the Harrowing. Status unknown. Last recorded engagement, final human stand at Earth." Dren's face was pale. They called it the Harrowing. Varric's mind spun. The name alone sent a primal shudder through him. This enemy, whatever it was, had wiped out humanity, the most feared and advanced species in recorded history. And yet— "What do you mean, status unknown?" Varric asked carefully. The machine's optics flared. "No record of final enemy fate. Humanity's last action. Global lockdown of war protocols. Directive was to wait for human command input. That input never came." The realization hit Varric like a physical blow. The Harrowing hadn't necessarily won. Humanity had set their war machines to sleep, leaving their fate unknown. Did humanity flee? Did they strike back one last time? Or had something else happened? One thing was clear. The war machines had been programmed for one final contingency, to wait until someone reactivated them. And now, that someone was Varric. "Captain," Dren whispered, "if we say yes, we might be unleashing something even the Federation isn't ready for." Varric's heart pounded. If the Harrowing was still out there, lurking in the void, waiting for another chance to strike, then humanity's war wasn't just their own. It belonged to the galaxy now. Alliance decision required. Varric took a breath. "We'll stand with you." The war machines came alive. The fortress shook as thousands of dormant systems activated, long-buried structures shifting, unlocking. In the distance, beyond the ruins, titanic warships, black as night, sleek as death, began to rise from their resting places beneath the surface. Weapons hummed to life, energy cores burning with power unseen for eons. For the first time in 500,000 years, Earth was preparing for war. And whatever was out there in the dark, it would soon know that humanity's vengeance had only been delayed. The ground trembled as Earth's war fleet awakened. Across the ruined landscape, ancient weapons powered up, their dormant systems roaring to life after 500,000 years of silence. Warships the size of cities emerged from beneath the earth, their black hulls gleaming as though freshly forged. From the command center, Captain Varric and his team could only watch as the impossible unfolded before them. Varric's throat was dry. "Dren, tell me I'm seeing this." Dren's voice was hushed with disbelief. "You're seeing it, Captain. And so is the entire galaxy if those ships go online." The machines had accepted Varric's decision. Earth's war engines were no longer waiting. They were preparing for battle. The primary war machine, the one that had addressed them first, stepped forward. Its massive frame cast an imposing shadow as it scanned Varric's team once more. Command accepted. War protocols restored. Strategic alignment required. The holograms above the console flickered again, shifting into formations. Battle lines, enemy markers, fleet positions. It was a war map, but one that had been left incomplete for 500,000 years. The final moments of humanity's desperate fight. And now, the machines expected Varric to complete it. New command protocol required. Strategic target designation. Dren tensed. "Captain, they want us to tell them where to strike." Varric stared at the vast war map. Thousands of enemy signatures had once occupied the field, but the Harrowing's last known positions were frozen in time. The machines had no new data. No idea whether the enemy still existed, where they had gone, or if they were even alive. And yet, they were ready to go to war as if no time had passed. The weight of the decision pressed on him. Was he about to unleash an ancient terror onto the galaxy? Would these machines even know when to stop? He turned towards the lead war machine. "We need more information before we can commit to a full-scale assault," he said carefully. "If the enemy is still out there, we need to know where they are. Otherwise, we're wasting resources." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, the war machine's optics flared with eerie understanding. Query logic accepted. Reconnaissance initiated. The ground shook again. From the darkened ruins, smaller, sleek drones emerged. Scout ships that had been buried alongside their larger counterparts. They shot into the sky, accelerating toward the void like hunting birds released from their cage. They would go forth, searching the stars for any trace of the enemy. Varric let out a slow breath. "That buys us time." But then, something unexpected happened. A different alert rang through the chamber, deeper, more urgent. The war machine's optics shifted, its massive frame turning toward a separate console that had remained dark until now. Warning, external signal detected. Varric's blood ran cold. "What?" Dren's hands flew over his scanner, his voice sharp. "Captain, something just pinged us from outside the system. It's not one of ours." Varric's mind raced. Had they been discovered? Had something been watching all along? The war machine spoke again. "Unknown signal origin distance, 20 light-years pattern match, partial harrowing signature." A chill ran through the entire team. The harrowing. "Captain." Dren's voice was barely above a whisper. "If that's them, they might have just realized that Earth isn't dead anymore." The implications were horrifying. If the harrowing still existed, if even a fragment of their forces remained, then waking Earth's war fleet had just sent a beacon straight to them. And if they were anything like humanity had feared, they were coming. Varric clenched his fists. There was no turning back now. The war that had once ended humanity was about to begin again, and this time there would be no retreat. The bridge of the expedition vessel was a storm of activity. Captain Varric stood at the center, watching as data poured in from the war machines below. Across the holographic displays, the unknown signal pulsed. A rhythmic, calculated pattern that sent a chill through the entire crew. The harrowing had heard them. Dren's voice was tight. "Captain, the signal is analyzing us. It's probing, trying to identify what just woke up down there." Varric's gut twisted. This wasn't just a stray signal. This was a test. The harrowing wasn't charging in blindly. They were watching, waiting. They want to know if humanity is truly back. "Any response from the war fleet?" he asked. Dren glanced at the massive war machines standing in eerie silence around them. "They're waiting for us." Varric turned toward the towering machine that had spoken first, its crimson optics glowing like a predator stalking unseen prey. "You recognize the signal?" Varric said. "You know what it is." The machine's optics pulsed once. Hostile signature confirmed. Partial enemy pattern detected. Strategic options: engage or observe. Varric's mind raced. If they engaged now, they would be plunging headfirst into a war 500,000 years old. But if they hesitated, they might be letting an unknown horror prepare for another attack. Then the war machine spoke again. Enemy testing response. Seeking humanity. The words sent a deep, primal fear through Varric's bones. The harrowing wasn't just listening. They were searching, hunting. Humanity had disappeared, and now, after all this time, something had stirred on Earth. They wanted to know who had awakened. Dren exhaled sharply. "Captain, if we let them go now, they might come back in full force. And if they're anything like what we saw in the archives, we won't survive." Varric knew the truth. This war was never over. The harrowing had won the first battle, but they had never declared victory. They had left something behind. A final whisper in the void, waiting to hear if their ancient enemy would ever rise again. And now, they had their answer. Varric looked at the war machines, at the dormant warships buried beneath Earth's ruins, at the endless ranks of silent, waiting weapons. 500,000 years ago, humanity had built its final defense. Now, the decision rested in Varric's hands. His fingers tightened into a fist. "Send a response." Dren hesitated. "Captain?" Varric's voice was steady. "Broadcast this on all frequencies. We are not human, but we are their legacy, and we are ready." The message sent. The silence stretched. Then, deep in the void, the unknown signal shifted. The harrowing had heard them, and they were coming. Behind him, Earth's war fleet fully awakened. Weapons hummed with power unseen in 500,000 years. Engines roared as massive warships ascended from their slumber, shaking off the dust of time. The final battle for humanity had not been fought. It had simply been waiting. And now, it was time to finish it. The Galactic Council chamber erupted in laughter. Alien delegates of every shape and size filled the vast circular hall, their voices a chorus of amusement at the latest spectacle before them. A grainy, hollow image of humanity's first warship. This thing is your answer to our fleet?" scoffed a reptilian diplomat, his scaled face twisting in amusement. "Your species has truly outdone itself in incompetence." A long-limbed ambassador with glistening purple skin flicked its mandibles. "It doesn't even have energy shields, primitive metal plating, and those, what do you call them? Ballistic weapons? Are you serious?" The laughter grew louder. At the center of the chamber, standing alone on the podium, was Admiral Cole Varric of the Terran Defense Initiative. He remained expressionless, his hands clasped behind his back, his posture rigid. The mockery didn't faze him. He had expected this reaction. For centuries, the Galactic Council had treated humanity as a joke, an insignificant, late-blooming species that had only recently stumbled into the stars. Their technology was crude compared to the older civilizations that had dominated the galaxy for millennia. Their weapons were considered outdated, their strategies primitive. And now humanity had dared to present this, a warship unlike anything the Council had seen, but for all the wrong reasons. Varric let the laughter die down before speaking. His voice was calm, steady. You find it amusing now, he said, his eyes scanning the room. But soon you won't be laughing. The council members exchanged amused glances. And why is that, human? The reptilian diplomat sneered. Do tell us. Varric allowed himself the faintest of smiles. Because you're all making one fatal mistake. You're judging our ship by your standards. The chamber fell into murmurs. Some delegates leaned forward, curious. You assume that just because our technology doesn't look like yours, it's inferior, Varric continued. That because we don't use energy shields or plasma weaponry, we don't stand a chance in a fight. You think that because we've never fought an interstellar war before, we wouldn't know how to win one. A heavy-set, amphibious ambassador gave a deep, guttural chuckle. Enlighten us, Admiral. What makes your warship so special? Varric's smile grew wider. You'll find out soon enough. The fleet of the Karath Dominion, a warrior race that prided itself on conquest, had been dispatched to handle a minor nuisance. That nuisance? Humanity's laughable warship. The Karath Admiral, a hulking brute with crimson scales and a crown of jagged horns, sat at the command chair of his flagship, a monstrous dreadnought bristling with energy cannons. His fleet of 60 warships hovered in formation around him, their sleek hulls gleaming under the light of a distant sun. Before them, alone in the void, was the Terran warship. It was ugly, blocky, heavy, a design that seemed more at home in a scrapyard than on a battlefield. It lacked the smooth, aerodynamic elegance of the Dominion's vessels. Its hull was covered in thick, dark plates, as if it had been hastily assembled from spare parts. The Karath Admiral grinned. Pathetic. With a gesture, he gave the order. The first barrage of energy lances surged forward, white-hot beams of destruction that could tear through the hull of any known warship in seconds. The Karath fleet didn't even bother maneuvering. Why would they? This was no battle. This was target practice. The beams struck the Terran ship dead on and did nothing. The energy splashed harmlessly against the thick metal plating, leaving only a faint glow. The Karath Admiral's grin faltered. Impossible, he muttered. He ordered another volley. The Dominion fleet unleashed a second barrage, followed by a third, hammering the Terran vessel with enough firepower to reduce a city to ashes. Still, nothing. The warship drifted forward, undamaged. Then, without warning, it fired back. There was no flash of energy, no plasma burst, just a sudden, deafening boom. A kinetic round, fired at near relativistic speeds, tore through the void. It slammed into the lead Karath destroyer, and in an instant, the ship ceased to exist. The sheer force of the impact didn't just damage the ship, it obliterated it, punching through its shields, its armor, and its core, like they were paper. The kinetic round kept going, cutting a fiery path through 2 more Dominion ships before vanishing into the black. A stunned silence fell over the Karath fleet. What was that? One of the bridge officers stammered. The Admiral's claws dug into the armrests of his chair. He had never seen anything like it. Plasma weapons were powerful, but they relied on energy. Energy could be countered, absorbed, dispersed. But this was pure, unrelenting force, a solid projectile moving so fast it carried the kinetic energy of a small sun. No shields could block that. No energy fields could absorb it. And the Terran ship was reloading. "Evasive maneuvers!" the Admiral bellowed, panic creeping into his voice. More booms echoed across the battlefield. More Dominion ships vanished into expanding clouds of debris. The once mighty fleet, which had laughed at humanity, was now scrambling to escape. The warship advanced, relentless, cold, unstoppable. On board the bridge, Admiral Varric watched the chaos unfold with quiet satisfaction. His ship didn't need fancy technology. It didn't need energy weapons or sleek designs. It had one thing no alien fleet had ever accounted for: brute force. And as the Karath fled, terrified, they finally understood the mistake they had made. They had laughed at humanity's warship. Now, they were running for their lives. The battlefield was a graveyard of shattered Dominion warships. Where once 60 mighty vessels had stood, now only wreckage and twisted metal drifted through the void. Fires raged inside the husks of dying ships, their crews screaming into dead calms, cut off from any hope of rescue. The TDS behemoth floated in the center of the carnage, untouched. On the bridge, Admiral Cole Varric observed the scattered remnants of the once mighty Karath fleet. He had expected resistance, but not this. Not an enemy so utterly unprepared for the raw, unfiltered brutality of human warfare. The Karath had underestimated them, and now they were paying the price. Varric turned to his weapons officer. Status? Lieutenant Harris, a no-nonsense officer with a sharp gaze, checked her console. 14 confirmed kills, Admiral. 3 more are drifting, dead in space. Survivors are running. Varric nodded. Reload the mass drivers. Prepare for another volley. There was a pause. Sir, they're retreating. Varric's expression was unreadable. That's not my problem. Across the battlefield, the remaining Karath ships were scrambling, their engines burning hot as they fled. There was no attempt at a coordinated counterattack, no brave last stand, just fear. A transmission came through, garbled, panicked. The Karath Admiral's voice, once filled with arrogance, now dripped with desperation. Human ship, cease fire, we surrender. Varric stared at the screen for a long moment. His crew waited, holding their breath. Then, finally, he leaned forward. No. The behemoth fired again. The kinetic slugs, each the size of a car and moving at near light speeds, struck with horrifying precision. One round tore through a fleeing destroyer, slicing it in half. Another punched straight through a command carrier, shattering its bridge before exiting through the rear of the ship, leaving a glowing hole in its wake. The remaining Dominion vessels barely had time to react. They weren't just losing a battle, they were being erased. The Karath Admiral's final scream was cut off as his flagship detonated in a brilliant explosion, its reactors overloading from the damage. Then, there was silence. Varric exhaled slowly, watching as the last wreckage drifted away. Situation? He asked. Lieutenant Harris's voice was steady. All targets eliminated. A ripple of quiet pride spread across the bridge, but Varric remained stone-faced. It wasn't over. Not yet. The Karath Dominion had been one of the most feared warrior races in the galaxy. Their fleets had ravaged dozens of worlds, crushed entire civilizations, and never lost a major battle. Now, a single human warship had annihilated one of their armadas. News of the massacre spread like wildfire. The Galactic Council, which had mocked humanity's military, suddenly found itself in an emergency session. The laughter of weeks prior had vanished. Now, there was only panic. This cannot be true, an amphibian ambassador croaked, slamming his webbed hands on the table. One ship cannot defeat an entire Dominion fleet. But it did, a feline-like diplomat whispered, her fur standing on end. The Karath have sent no survivors, no counterattack. They're silent. A murmur spread through the chamber. What kind of weapons did the humans use? A reptilian delegate asked hesitantly. The question lingered. The galactic powers had always seen themselves as superior, their energy-based technology the pinnacle of warfare. Humanity, in their eyes, was little more than a primitive species playing with outdated toys. But those outdated toys had just wiped one of the most powerful militaries from existence. The recordings of the battle, leaked by a terrified Karath official, played again in the council chamber. Delegates watched in horror as the kinetic slugs tore through ships as if they were made of paper. There were no shields to deflect them, no energy dispersal fields to mitigate the impact. The raw physics behind the weapons were undeniable. One counselor, a towering insectoid, turned to his peers. "They have perfected something we dismissed centuries ago," he said. "They do not fight like us. They do not think like us. That ship, it is not a warship." The chamber fell silent. "It is an executioner." Back aboard the Behemoth, Varric stood in the war room, surrounded by high-ranking officers from Earth's military divisions. The battle had been a test, one that humanity had passed with devastating results. The question now was simple. What next? "The Dominion will retaliate," a grizzled general muttered. "Even if they're terrified, their pride won't allow this to stand. We need to be ready." Varric nodded. "We won't wait for them to come to us." A few officers exchanged glances. "Sir?" Varric's eyes were cold. "We take the fight to them. No more waiting. No more proving ourselves to a galaxy that laughs at us. If they want to see what humanity is capable of—" He turned to the star map, highlighting the Dominion's home system. "Then we'll show them." The room was silent for a moment. Then, one by one, the officers nodded. Orders were given. Warships were mobilized. The Dominion had started this war. Humanity was going to end it. The moment the decision was made, Earth's war machine roared to life. For decades, humanity had been seen as little more than a minor power, a species of ambitious upstarts playing at interstellar politics. But deep beneath the surface, beneath the treaties and diplomatic pleasantries, humanity had been preparing. The TDS Behemoth had been the first of its kind. It would not be the last. Across the Sol system, shipyards churned with newfound urgency. Massive orbital dry docks, hidden behind the moons of Jupiter and the asteroid belt, began final assembly on the next generation of Terran warships. The Leviathan-class dreadnoughts, vessels designed with a single purpose: to annihilate any force that dared challenge humanity's right to exist. Meanwhile, in the Krath Dominion's core worlds, panic had taken root. The Krath High Council, made up of the most powerful warlords of their species, had convened in a frantic emergency session. The vast chamber, built to exude dominance and intimidation, now reeked of fear. A hologram played in the center of the war table, the last transmissions from their lost fleet. Glorious Dominion warships being ripped apart by human projectiles. Their proud warriors screaming in confusion as their energy shields failed to stop the incoming devastation. One of the warlords, his crimson scales darkened with age, growled, One ship did this!" Another warlord, younger and more brash, slammed his fist against the table. "Then we will send 1,000! We will erase these vermin from the galaxy!" But the others hesitated. The elder warlord narrowed his reptilian eyes. "And what if 1,000 ships fall like the First Fleet? What if our empire's name becomes synonymous with defeat?" The chamber was silent. Finally, a voice, cold, measured, spoke from the shadows. "There is another way." The gathered warlords turned as a new figure stepped into the light. Clad in ceremonial armor, with eyes black as the void, Grand Strategist Calaris wasn't a warrior in the traditional sense. He had never fought on the front lines. He did not wear the scars of battle. But he had conquered more worlds with his mind than most warlords had with their blades. Calaris paced around the war table, studying the frozen image of the Terran warship. "We assumed them weak because they are new to the stars," he murmured. "We mocked them because their ships do not follow our designs. That was our mistake." The young warlord scoffed. "Then what do you propose, strategist?" Surrender? Kalaris' gaze snapped toward him, cold as a dead sun. I propose we fight smarter. The elder warlord leaned forward. You have a plan? Kalaris allowed himself the ghost of a smile. Yes, but it will not be the war we expected. Admiral Varric stood on the bridge of the behemoth, staring at the fleet before him. The First Fleet. From Luna Base to the asteroid belt, humanity had assembled a war force unlike any it had ever fielded. While the other races relied on energy weapons and nimble, shielded cruisers, humanity had built something else entirely. Titanic dreadnoughts, their hulls layered in reinforced metal plating, designed not to deflect attacks, but to endure them. Instead of energy weapons, they bristled with hyper-accelerated railguns and mass drivers, solid projectiles moving so fast and so hard that even the mightiest shields meant nothing. And the behemoth led them all. Varric turned to his officers. Final status? Lieutenant Harris responded immediately. All ships report combat readiness. The fleet is prepared to make the jump. Varric nodded. And the Dominion's home system? A tactical officer pulled up the latest intel. Their fleets are mobilizing, sir, but they're not coming toward us. Varric frowned. What? The officer hesitated. They're falling back, retreating to their core worlds, fortifying their strongholds. They're not meeting us in open space. Varric's grip tightened behind his back. Karath warriors did not retreat. They fought. They conquered. They never ran. So why were they retreating now? A pit formed in his stomach. They're setting a trap, he muttered. Harris looked at him sharply. Sir? Varric exhaled slowly. The Krath know they can't win a head-on battle, so they're forcing us to play their game. He turned toward his officers. They want us to invade. Silence hung in the air. For centuries, the Karath Dominion had never lost a war in their own territory. Their planets were fortress worlds, their cities built beneath layers of planetary defenses. No species had ever successfully invaded them. If humanity pushed forward, it would be walking into a meat grinder. And yet, Varric's lips curled into a smile. They think they're trapping us, he murmured. They still don't understand. Harris blinked. Understand what, sir? Varric turned to his officers, his voice steady. That we're not here to conquer them. His eyes burned with purpose. We're here to erase them. The orders were given. Across the fleet, Terran warships powered their jump drives. 100 dreadnoughts, 1,000 cruisers, a sea of gunships and carriers, the entire might of humanity, prepared for war. And at the head of it all, the behemoth surged forward. The Krath Dominion had set their trap. Humanity was springing it willingly, and this time, there would be no mercy. The TDS behemoth led the charge. As the countdown to the jump ticked down, Admiral Cole Varric stood in silence on the bridge, staring at the massive tactical display before him. The fleet, his fleet, stood ready. Hundreds of warships, each one a testament to humanity's new approach to warfare, floated in formation around the behemoth. Their engines burned bright, their weapons loaded, their crews prepared for the moment that would change history. The Karath had invited humanity into the heart of their empire. Varric would make them regret it. Jump in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. A burst of light. A moment of disorientation. Then, arrival. The Terran fleet exited hyperspace just outside the Karath home system. Immediately, alarms flared across the bridge. Multiple enemy signatures detected, Harris called out. We've got at least 3 defensive fleets moving to intercept hundreds of warships. Varric barely reacted. He had expected this. The Karath were trying to overwhelm them with numbers, hoping to compensate for their technological disadvantage. It was a logical move. It was also a mistake. "Lock firing solutions on the lead ships," he ordered. "Let's give them a demonstration." A ripple of confirmations echoed across the bridge. Moments later, the first volley of human firepower erupted into the void. The kinetic slugs moved faster than any Dominion officer could react. The moment they left the mass drivers, they had already sealed their target's fate. Explosions blossomed in the darkness as the front line of the Karath fleet ceased to exist. Ships meant to withstand energy weapons crumbled under the sheer force of human ballistics. The enemy formation broke instantly, captains scrambling to reposition, their carefully planned defense turning into chaos. But the Terran fleet did not stop. Wave after wave of fire rained down upon the Karath forces, each impact a reminder that humanity did not play by the rules of conventional warfare. The Dominion had spent centuries perfecting their energy weapons, their shields, their plasma lances. None of it mattered. Against the sheer kinetic fury of Earth's fleet, they were little more than target practice. Varric watched with cold satisfaction as the enemy line collapsed. The first defensive fleet was in shambles, its warships torn apart. But he knew this was only the beginning. A second wave of Karath reinforcements surged forward, this time staying out of range of human mass drivers. Instead of engaging directly, they launched thousands of long-range plasma torpedoes, each one streaking through the void like a comet of death. The bridge shook as the first impacts struck. The behemoth's thick plating absorbed the blows, but other ships in the fleet weren't as lucky. Several human cruisers took direct hits, their hulls burning under the onslaught. Varric's jaw tightened. The Karath had adapted. They were keeping their distance, forcing humanity to close the gap. If they stayed back and fired from range, they might actually stand a chance. But Varric had already planned for this. "Deploy the torpedo interceptors," he commanded. Across the fleet, thousands of small, automated defense drones launched from their bays. Each one carried a simple directive: intercept and destroy. As the next wave of plasma torpedoes came screaming in, the drones engaged. Micro railguns fired pinpoint rounds, detonating the torpedoes mid-flight. What had once been a deadly storm of plasma was reduced to harmless debris before it could reach its targets. The Karath formation hesitated. That was all the opening Varric needed. "All ships, advance!" The behemoth led the charge, pushing straight through the weakened enemy lines. Behind it, the Terran fleet followed, overwhelming the Dominion forces with brute force and relentless firepower. Karath warships exploded in every direction, their formations shattered, their defenses failed. Within an hour, the first battle for Karath Prime was over. Humanity had won. On the Karath homeworld, the High Council watched in horror. Their outer defenses were gone. Their fleets were retreating. The war they had believed they would win had turned into a slaughter. One warlord pounded his fists against the table. "This is impossible. They should be dead. Their technology is primitive. How can they be winning?" Grand Strategist Kalaris did not look away from the battle reports. His expression was unreadable. "Because they are not fighting like we expected." The room fell silent. "What do you mean?" an elder warlord growled. Kalaris turned to face them. "The humans do not fight for territory. They do not fight for conquest. They fight for obliteration." His gaze darkened. "They are not here to rule us. They are here to end us." A chill settled over the chamber. For the first time in their history, the Karath Dominion knew fear. On the bridge of the behemoth, Varric studied the battle map. The Dominion's fleets had fallen back to their homeworld, gathering for a final stand. He had no intention of giving them the chance. "All ships prepare for orbital bombardment." There was a long pause. Lieutenant Harris hesitated. "Sir, we'll be targeting civilian sectors." Varric's voice was cold. They would do the same to us. Another pause, then a quiet nod. Aye, sir. The countdown began. The warships moved into position. The Karath had started this war. Humanity would finish it. As the first kinetic bombardment shells were loaded into the launchers, Varric gave the final order. Fire. The sky over Karath Prime turned to fire. Fire rained from the sky. The first wave of kinetic bombardment struck the outer cities of Karath Prime with the force of planetary extinction events. The Dominion had spent centuries perfecting planetary defenses against energy weapons, giant plasma shields, thermal dispersal systems, atmospheric ion barriers. None of it mattered. The moment the first hyper-accelerated projectiles slammed into the surface, entire city blocks ceased to exist. Towers built for warlords and generals crumbled like sand castles under a tidal wave. The ground itself fractured, sending massive shockwaves across the continent, leveling everything in their path. Millions of Karath civilians, warriors, and leaders alike had no time to run, no warning, no defense. Humanity had unleashed hell. Inside the underground bunkers of the Karath High Council, chaos reigned. The ground above them trembled as the bombardment continued. Red emergency lights cast eerie shadows across the chamber, where warlords and strategists argued, panicked, pleaded for a solution. "This is genocide," one of the younger warlords shouted. "We must negotiate. We must surrender." An older warlord grabbed him by the throat, his crimson eyes burning with fury. "You would beg like a weakling? The Dominion does not surrender." The room fell into heated arguments, but Colaris, the grand strategist, remained silent. His gaze was locked on the holographic display of the battlefield. He had underestimated humanity. They all had. But what disturbed him most was not their superior firepower. It was their resolve. The humans had not demanded tribute. They had not sent terms of surrender. They had not given speeches of conquest. They had simply arrived and begun destroying everything. Colaris inhaled deeply, then spoke. "We have only one option left." The chamber quieted. Colaris's eyes gleamed with dark intent. "We cannot defeat them in space. We cannot match their firepower. But there is one thing we can take from them, something they have not yet lost." The other warlords leaned in. "What?" Colaris's voice was chillingly calm. "Earth." A single Karath warship broke through the chaos of the battlefield. Smaller than the others, sleek and fast, it activated its experimental phase warp drive, an untested, unstable piece of technology meant for deep infiltration missions. Its destination? Sol system. The Dominion had finally accepted that they could not defeat humanity in open battle. But they had one final hope. If they could strike at Earth itself, perhaps, just perhaps, they could force humanity into a ceasefire. The warship disappeared into the void. A suicide mission had begun. On the TDS Behemoth, Admiral Varric watched as his fleet continued its devastation of the Dominion's homeworld. Entire military installations had been leveled. The orbital defense network had been reduced to floating wreckage. The planetary government had fallen silent. And yet, Varric knew they had to finish the job. "Deploy ground forces," he ordered. "We end this today." Thousands of dropships launched from the fleet, carrying the most advanced human combat units ever fielded, the Terran Shock Corps. Unlike the other races, humanity did not rely on energy weapons or plasma blades in ground combat. Their soldiers carried heavy-impact rail rifles, exosuits reinforced with ballistic plating, and mechanized walker units that could tear through anything the Dominion still had left. The Karath warriors fought with desperation. But the truth was undeniable. They were outmatched. Human troops landed in the ruins of the capital city, advancing through the wreckage with ruthless efficiency. the last remaining Dominion warlords rallied their forces, attempting one final counterattack. It was a massacre. The Terran Shock Corps moved through the city like an unstoppable wave, crushing any resistance in their path. Mechanized walkers fired high-velocity slugs through buildings, bringing entire fortifications down on top of the Karath defenders. By the end of the day, the Dominion's military was no more. The war was over. Varric stood among the ruins of the Karath capital, his boots pressing against the shattered remains of what had once been an empire. Smoke choked the air. Fires burned in the distance. The city was quiet. He knew what would come next. The Galactic Council would call this a war crime. They would denounce humanity as savages, as destroyers. He didn't care. The Karath had chosen this war. Humanity had finished it. As he turned to leave, his communicator buzzed, a transmission from Earth. "Sir," the officer's voice was tense. "We have a problem." Varric frowned. "What is it?" There was a long pause. Then, the words that sent a chill down his spine. "The Dominion has sent an infiltration ship. It's headed for Earth." Varric's blood ran cold. The war wasn't over yet. Admiral Cole Varric felt the weight of the war pressing down on him as he stood in the ruins of the Karath capital. The Dominion had been crushed, their fleets were annihilated, their cities lay in ruins, smoldering under the relentless assault of Earth's military. And yet, the battle wasn't over. "The Dominion has sent an infiltration ship. It's headed for Earth." Varric clenched his jaw as the words echoed in his earpiece. He turned to Lieutenant Harris, his second in command, who was already pulling up the data. A red dot blinked on the star map. A single ship, streaking through deep space at an impossible speed. The TDS behemoth had destroyed entire fleets. Humanity's war machine had crushed an empire, but this was something else. A desperate gamble. A final attempt to strike at the heart of humanity. Varric exhaled. "They think they can take Earth from us?" His voice was steady, cold. "Not a chance." Back on Earth, alarms blared through every major city. The Dominion ship was coming. It had bypassed traditional hyperspace lanes using experimental phase warp technology, an unstable, dangerous method of travel that no species had dared to perfect. The ship wasn't moving fast. It was tearing through reality itself. And its target was clear: Earth's capital, New London. Terran High Command went into full lockdown. Every orbital defense station was primed for engagement. Fighters scrambled, missile platforms were brought online, and the planetary defense grid warmed up its railgun batteries. But none of it mattered. The enemy ship wasn't coming through conventional space. It was shifting between dimensions, phasing in and out of real space as it moved. No weapon could lock onto it. No scanner could predict its trajectory. If it made it to Earth's atmosphere, there would be no stopping it. Varric knew there was only one option. He turned to his helmsman. "Get us back to Sol. Now." The bridge crew hesitated. "Sir, the fleet isn't ready to—" "I didn't ask about the fleet." Varric's eyes burned with determination. "Just the behemoth." The crew exchanged glances. Then, without another word, the order was executed. Engines roared to life. The behemoth turned, its massive frame groaning as it realigned. Moments later, its hyperdrive engaged, and the dreadnought vanished into the void. It was a reckless move. No escorts, no backup, just one ship chasing another across the stars. But Varric didn't care. Earth was under threat. That was all that mattered. The Dominion warship phased into real space just outside Earth's orbit. It was smaller than expected, barely the size of a heavy cruiser, but its purpose was clear. It wasn't a battleship. It was a planet killer. Inside the sleek, silver hull, Karath engineers worked frantically, preparing their doomsday weapon. A quantum destabilization warhead. something the Dominion had never used before. It wouldn't just bomb a city, it would collapse reality itself, ripping apart everything within a 500-kilometer radius. If it detonated, New London, and every living soul in it, would be erased from existence. Earth's defense forces fired everything they had: plasma missiles, kinetic rounds, orbital lasers, but the Dominion ship kept phasing in and out of real space, avoiding every single attack. Then, suddenly, boom! A ripple tore through space as something else arrived. The behemoth emerged from hyperspace just outside the moon's orbit, a beast of war, scarred from battle but still standing. And it was angry. Varric wasted no time. "Lock all weapons on that ship." Lieutenant Harris's fingers flew across the controls. "Sir, we can't get a solid targeting lock. It keeps phasing out." Varric's mind raced. The Dominion ship was moving in a pattern. Unpredictable, but not impossible to track. "Prepare the mass drivers." His voice was ice. "We're going to fire manually." The bridge crew went silent. Manual targeting? Against a ship that wasn't even in normal space? It was insane. It was impossible. It was the only way. Varric stepped forward, gripping the targeting controls himself. He didn't trust computers for this. This was a battle of instincts, of experience, of pure human determination. He watched the enemy ship phase in and out, his mind analyzing the pattern, calculating the next emergence point. Then, he saw it. Firing! The behemoth's railguns roared to life, a single kinetic slug, moving at 1% the speed of light, ripped through the void. The Dominion ship phased back into real space just in time to meet its doom. The slug tore straight through its hull, splitting it apart in an instant. The ship's shields never even activated. There was no explosion, no fiery debris, just a silent shattering, as though the ship had never existed. Varric exhaled. It was over. The alarms on Earth went silent. The orbital defense stations powered down. The people in New London looked to the skies, wondering what had just happened, and above them, floating like a guardian in the heavens, the behemoth remained. Earth was safe. Varric closed his eyes, exhaustion washing over him. The war had pushed humanity to its limits. It had revealed horrors he never wanted to see again. But they had won. The Karath Dominion was dead. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity was no longer a joke, no longer the underdog, no longer the weak species that others mocked. They were unstoppable. Days later, the Galactic Council reconvened. No laughter, no mockery, only fear. The Council had once dismissed humanity as a primitive race. Now they whispered a new name in hushed tones. The Executioners. No species dared challenge them. No empire would ever again underestimate Earth. Because when humanity went to war, they did not lose. And the galaxy would never forget.